I'm Robert Lewis, and from Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm delighted to be with you at the Sage Conference. I've been a pastor for over 40 years, and having just turned 60, I feel very qualified to be a part of the Sage Conference. You know, if I had to do my ministry over again and look back, one of the things that I would do is concentrate even more heavily in what I call foundation building. And I thought for just a second I would just give you a little brief diagram of what I mean by that. You know, when you go back to Genesis, you see God giving 4 directives for building his new society. One was to build godly men and women, male and females, in his image, then bringing those healthy males and females together into one flesh that he called marriage, or we call marriage. Then he called them to be fruitful and multiply, which is around children. And then the last thing he said was to rule and subdue. Those were his 4 directives. I remember as a young pastor, I looked at that, what I call that foundation building for society, and I said, you know, that's a good diagram for building the church. And so what I did in my early years is I concentrated mainly on building men, on doing evangelism to expand God's kingdom, and to help in marriage. But probably like a lot of you, as the church gets bigger, as it gets more complex, we move from building what I call a foundation to getting more on the structure itself up here and the show, the weekly show, and we get so involved in that we forget about how essential it is to build these very essential foundation blocks. So if I had to do it over again, I would be ruthless about building godly men and women. I would be ruthless about having a relentless marriage program for marriages to produce good marriages. I would be relentless on having a parenting program in my church, and I would be ruthless about evangelism and service, and not get so caught up in the day-to-day here that this goes unaddressed. The greatest thing that I did for our church is I concentrated on building men through a ministry called Men's Fraternity, and because of that, it totally transformed my church, because I was constantly investing in what I call a foundation exercise. But at the same time, I began to discover that marriages were being troubled in our church, because we would have an occasional seminar on marriage or a preaching series, but no ongoing training for marriages. We had a great children's program, but you know, most churches have great children's programs, but nothing for parents. And I would be ruthless about having, for any parent, a training program to tell them how to be a good parent. And I would reemphasize, especially in this day, evangelism, not just going out and doing good works. I love that, but evangelism, sharing the gospel. So if I had to do it over again, I guess let me just sum it up again. I would concentrate on foundation building more than the show.